Assalamu alaikum. Let's cook. The civil rights mafia man. This right here is a wild story, and it's also some white privilege as well. We're talking about a guy by the name of Greg Scarpa Sr., Colombo crime family captain he was. Okay, now this dude, Greg Scarpa Sr., he was known as the Grim Reaper. They say he killed over 120 people. Maybe that's exaggerated. His son says it's probably more like 50. Now this man right here is a straight sociopath, numb serial killer, but he's a real tough guy. While he was a mafia captain, and in the mafia period, the Colombo crime family, he was also working for the FBI pretty much his entire mob career. This man was an informant for the FBI, and he used that as a license to kill more people, and he was allowed to do it. He could take advantage of that. Now, at some point, he was involved in getting some important information during the civil rights era for the FBI. Now, again, people, this guy was in the mafia and he was an informant for the FBI, paid on the books. So we have to go back to the summer of 1964, Mississippi. So at this point, the civil rights movement was really popping. It was at its boiling point. You had the freedom riders who were civil rights workers who flooded the South trying to help black people register to vote. And in Mississippi, the white community was willing to kill anybody that was black who was trying to vote, or anybody that was trying to help these people register to vote and go vote. Mississippi, to this day, they had no limits. These crackers in Mississippi were willing to kill any and everybody. So there were three young activists, right? One by the name of James Chaney, another Andrew Goodman, and Michael Schwerner. Two white, one black. They were investigating the burning of a black church, and they were also part of the Freedom Riders down here in Mississippi trying to get people to register to vote. All of a sudden, these three, they just disappeared without a trace. Disappeared. What happened to them? Well, I'm sure that most people had a pretty good idea of what happened to these guys who were in Mississippi in 1964 as freedom riders trying to get black people to register to vote, but they just disappeared. So their disappearance triggered one of the biggest FBI investigations in American history. They say at that time, or probably all time, I'm not sure. The FBI knew that these three had been murdered by the white community. Their problem was they couldn't find the bodies. Where are these bodies at? The FBI wasn't getting anywhere. Now, at the time, there was a lot of pressure on this president by the name of Lyndon B. Johnson, because Lyndon B. Johnson, he just passed the Civil Rights Act in 1964. So being that he came with this whole Civil Rights Act, that's what he was riding off of. So these civil rights activists were like, hey, you talking this Civil Rights Act stuff, you passed this act. We got civil rights workers down here being kidnapped and possibly murdered and disappearing, Mr. President. You know what I'm saying? So President Lyndon Johnson, he felt as though I got to do something about that, because this is what I'm riding off of right here, this whole civil rights thing. So he calls up his old friend, J. Edgar Hoover, who's the director of the FBI. Now, these two, they're old friends. They actually lived on the same street, a couple doors down from each other in the past. Not at the time, of course, because you got one in the White House. You know what I'm saying? He moved or whatever. He's the president, but they knew each other. They were friends and neighbors. They had two different agendas and what they wanted to do. Lyndon B. Johnson, he was riding off that civil rights wave for whatever benefit it was for him. And J. Edgar Hoover, he was an overt racist who was all about, at the time, solving bank robberies or whatever, doing that type stuff. So, and he did a whole lot of other stuff. Again, J. Edgar Hoover was a hardcore overt racist, but this is kind of what he was focusing on at this time. So President Johnson hits up J. Edgar Hoover. He's like, we need this thing solved. My image is on the line. I need something to crack with these three civil rights workers who disappeared. The FBI in Mississippi, they ain't getting nowhere with the case. So the FBI they're thinking like, okay, well, we know what we could do. We got this guy from New York, this mafia guy, Greg Scarpa. Tough guy. He's our informant. We pay him. So they get Greg Scarpa, the Colombo gangster. Come down here to Mississippi, find out what happened. Do whatever you got to do. He starts getting some leads. He's talking to some people. So he goes to a television repair shop where a KKK member owns it, okay? He goes to this television repair shop. The owner of this repair shop is a member of the KKK, puts pressure on him, pulls the gun out, tells the KKK guy, look, give me this information. The KKK guy gives him some information, but he's lying. Greg Scarpa didn't know at the time this dude was lying. Greg Scarpa gets that information to the FBI. The FBI comes back to Greg Scarpa like, hey, that guy gave you some bad info. He's lying. So Greg Scarpa goes back to this same guy who owns this television repair shop, KKK man. This time he has a new plan. He's going to do some torture, doing what he does best. He pulls out the gun and he has a knife with him, a blade. He makes this KKK guy drop his pants or whatever. And I don't know if he cut it off. I'm not sure what he did, but it was some real torture here, okay? So this KKK man then, after this pressure, he tells Greg Scarpa where the bodies of these 3 civil rights workers are. And these bodies were hidden in an earthen dam in a place called Philadelphia, Mississippi. So New York Colombo mafia man, informant for the FBI, Greg Scarpa, solves the crime. Now, the KKK men who did this to these 3 freedom riders, they were not prosecuted for murder. They were prosecuted for civil rights violations. Many years later, slaps on the wrist. No murder for them. Now, let's move on. The FBI calls Greg Scarpa Sr. again. They need help again 2 years later. In Mississippi, in the year of 1966, a black man by the name of Vernon Dahmer. Now, this man, Vernon Dahmer, he was biracial. Actually, he was only 25% black, but he chose to live his life as a black man in Mississippi. And he was a civil rights leader, okay? He had a lot of money. You know, he had farm money. And in the year of 1966, what he did was he publicly offered to pay the poll taxes for any black citizen who could not afford them. Oh, you want to vote? You can't afford your poll taxes? I got you. That's what this man Vernon Dahmer said. So the white knights of the Ku Klux Klan, they didn't like that. They wasn't feeling that. They said, we got to do something about this dude. They go to his house, firebomb his house, try to take everybody out. He's defending his family. He grabs the rifle, gets his family out. He's shooting back, but he suffered fatal burns and smoke inhalation. He died, you know, fighting. He got his family out though. So President Lyndon B. Johnson, he said, hey, we need to get on this. Another federal investigation. The FBI is back on it. Who do they call? They call their Colombo gangster informant from New York, Greg Scarpa Sr. again. So Greg Scarpa goes down to Mississippi and he found the guys who did that also. He found the guys who did that, people. Now this time, they did prosecute these killers for the murder of Vernon Dahmer. These guys were actually charged with murder. Guy by the name of Sam Bowers, he was the Klan's imperial wizard. And he actually was convicted finally in 1998 after mad mistrials. They didn't even want to put these, these people were allowed to do whatever they wanted to do in Mississippi. A lot of things we never even heard of, people that happened to our people in Mississippi. Don't even know the story. Now this guy, Greg Scarpa Sr., a big mafia guy, killer, numb, psychopath, sociopath, whatever. He solved more crimes during the civil rights era than the government probably did the whole time. The government wasn't doing nothing. They were sending Greg Scarpa Sr. to solve these crimes, but I'm not trying to give him credit like he's some great guy. He's not. He's not a good guy. He's a rat informant. He played both sides of the fence. He took advantage of that, so he was able to hurt and kill more people. He wasn't loyal to his own people. A real weasel type. He didn't believe in that omerta stuff that the mob has been lying about for years. Greg Scarpa Sr. only cared about himself, and that's it. But he was a tough guy, and he did not care about killing at all. So check what happened with Greg Scarpa Sr. He was arrested in 1992. The FBI couldn't take it anymore. His crimes became too violent, too public, too politically sensitive. They couldn't shield him any longer. And then he's also a cross. You know, they don't respect him anyway because he wasn't loyal to his own people. And you know, nobody respects people who aren't loyal to their own people and who are fake, even if they can use them for something at the time. So they let him go. You know, he was involved in a Colombo crime family war in 91, 92. A lot of bodies dropped. You know, they hit him with all these charges, you know, RICO charges, organized crime activities, extortion, loan sharking, drug trafficking, you know, and a lot of murders against people. And in 1993, this guy was sentenced to life in prison, and that's where he went. Check this out. Something interesting about this dude, Greg Scarpa, people. He actually died of AIDS. Now, Greg Scarpa Sr., he always had issues, right? He was always in pain, probably from living such a tough guy life. A lot of fights, a lot of shooting, stabbings, or whatever he was in. Real tough guy life. So he always had ailments and pains from that. So he popped aspirin all day. So as you know, aspirin destroys your stomach lining. Eventually, it destroyed his stomach lining. He had to get surgery. During surgery, he needed a blood transfusion. So when he got this blood transfusion, right, he didn't want to get blood from people in New York because he didn't want to get blood from black people or Puerto Ricans or whatever people in New York. He's like, I'm not getting their blood. I'm not catching nothing. So he insisted that people from his crew, his tight crew, donate blood, and they did. So when they donated blood, one of his guys had HIV, gave him the blood, boom, Greg Scarpa has HIV. So he eventually died from that. He lived 10 years after, but he died from that. The guy who had HIV, I don't know how he got it. Some say he was on steroids and using dirty needles. I don't know, heroin shooting up. Maybe he was one of them Finocchios or whatever they call them. You know, maybe he was with the Skittles or whatever. I don't know. But one of the guys had HIV, gave Greg Scarpa the blood. He died from that, and that was the end of him. And I believe that Mark Wahlberg is making a movie about this guy, Greg Scarpa Sr. I think it comes out in a couple months or something like that. I don't know. People get in the comments easy.